In just 1 year, the expectations have completely changed in Kansas City. What will they be judged on now? We'll tell you next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcast. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, we're on Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. We have a couple of things that we're going to be diving into today. Of course, kicking it off with what the expectation should be for the 2025 squad. We'll talk a little bit about the lack of knowing how to watch the Royals next year. They seem to be that one team that's really up in the air of where you'll be able to watch them. Amazon Prime could or could not be involved. We'll dive into that a little bit more in about 10 to 15 minutes or so. Also going to go over the most recent talks about a stadium being built for the Royals, where it would be, my thoughts on it, and in all honesty, just how burned out I am and talking about a new stadium, where it could be, and really what my feelings are right now about where the Royals will be playing in the future. But as I just promised, we're kicking off the show today with what the expectations should be like for this ball club going into 2025. I don't think it's any secret at this point that the front office is fully aware of what they're going to need to do this offseason. I think my favorite thing about J.J. Picollo and John Sherman is they're very open, they're transparent, they're honest with what the team is going to do. And that goes back to last offseason. They said what the Royals needed to do, what their expectations would be for 2024, and I believe they went above and beyond that. I did not expect in one offseason for them to sign 2 starters to the rotation, to add a bat, to add a couple of bench players, to get Bobby Witt Jr. to a long-term extension, and to get to the postseason and win a playoff series. And in fact, win a playoff game in the ALDS. Those things all overexceeded my expectations. But also, I feel like a lot of people understand that when you're coming off 106 losses, in which you really didn't spend that much money, it should be easy to overachieve the next year. As we've addressed it before, if the Royals would have won 70 games in 2024, they wouldn't have been that exciting of a team. I think a lot of people would have still had a lot of criticisms towards Matt Quatrero, towards maybe John Sherman and J.J. Picollo for not bringing in the right guys, but it would have been a 14-win improvement. To the rest of baseball, that would be considered a successful season. We knew about where the Royals farm system was. We knew about the financial ability they had. Hey, they're not going to improve that much from a 106-loss season when they're not overhauling the roster. But as it came to be, this really was a roster overhaul, and they were able to improve by more than 14 games. They more than doubled that with a 30-win improvement, and they showed that, hey, with the right buttons being pressed, with the right money being spent, you don't need to go through a rebuild anymore. Now comes the difficult part about this, and maybe the conversation that some Royals fans out there don't really want to have. And I know right now the feeling inside the front office and with the ownership group, and more importantly, within the clubhouse, with the players and the coaches, they believe like they can be better than 86 wins. They feel like they'll be good enough to win the division next year. And it's still going to be a dogfight. Cleveland's going to be good. The Tigers are going to be better. The Twins, I still think, are going to be good. The only team you're not going to have to worry about is the White Sox. But everybody else in that division is going to have an opportunity to win. And so when you have a season like the Royals had in 2024, that now becomes the baseline. That's really the scary thing about this. That's the baseline of what you need to achieve in 2025. You have to have, at minimum, 86 wins for, I think, the fan base to still believe that everything's headed in the right direction. If you follow up 2024 with an 80 and 82 season and you miss the postseason, there's going to be people that are upset. That's just the way things go in sports. You're always wanting to be better than the next year, especially when you return a lot of the same talent from the previous year. So those expectations change about, what fans expect from front office members, what they expect from certain players, and really what the baseline should be. What's the bar for everybody? And I think last year, the blissness of it all was the best part about the team. If they were in it in June or July, hey, this already feels great. Everything else at this point is a cherry on top. When they got to the postseason, I even said multiple times, this is all just icing on the cake right now. If they win a playoff series, great. If they go out of the way of the World Series, great. If they get swept, still fine, because they weren't expected to be here. Now that expectation changes to you should expect to be here. You should expect good months. You should expect a good rotation. You should expect an improvement from the lineup. And hopefully the attendance reflects that. Hopefully the fans buy in and they think this is going to be a great year in 2025. But it's always difficult to improve on an already phenomenal season. I mean, when you think about it, getting further than Game 4 of the ALDS is not really a feat that a lot of teams accomplish. And that's what the Royals were able to do last year. They definitely were blessed with good health in that rotation. I know there were some injuries, Vinny Pasquantino being the most notable. They didn't have Chris Bubich for half the year. There were injuries to the number 5 spot in the rotation. Kyle Isbell got banged up. MJ Melendez, when he was hot, got banged up. Michael Massey got banged up. But for the most part, their strengths, they stayed healthy all year long. And when you look at 2025, I do expect this roster to be better because J.J. Picollo is smart enough to know to improve on an 86-win season, you can't just say, well, last year we were able to have all the right buttons pressed. We were able to be the benefit of some lucky things here and there. The American League Central had the worst team that baseball has ever seen. You were definitely a beneficiary of that. But the good GMs out there, which I believe J.J. Picollo to be one of those, you look at what your roster was and say, we got to continue to go up. Even though we could sit back and be patted on the back for improving by 30 games, as I think everybody gave them the nice pat on the back, it's about showing that this wasn't a fluke. We are going to be a team that contends every single year. There's nothing stopping us from being the Brewers. There's nothing stopping us from being the Cardinals. There's nothing stopping us from being the Rays. And you might be wondering, why am I bringing up those teams? And hey, those teams haven't won championships in a while. What I'm getting at is that year in, year out, Milwaukee, the Cardinals, the Rays, I know the Cardinals have had bad back-to-back years, but historically, they have good seasons. They have winning baseball. They've got good attendance. And I think the Royals can really learn a lesson from what 14 and 15 were. It was hair on fire. It was fun. There was lots of expectations, championship expectations back in the mid-2010s. But then there was the tremendous fall off. And I think this time around, you learn from those mistakes and say, we don't want just 2 or 3 years of really fun baseball, even if that meant reaching the pinnacle. We want to have great chances every single year. That year in, year out, you expect the Royals to be a competitive bunch, whether they're winning 85 to 95 games. That, to me, is what the goal should be every single year. How do we get this roster in place to win anywhere from 85 to 95 games? Because every single year, that's going to be good enough to get you into October. And the more chances you have, the better a chance you're going to have of hoisting the trophy when it's all said and done. And I know that baseball this year rewarded a lot of teams for spending an absurd amount of money. And the Royals are just not going to be that team that spends hundreds of millions on players. And they did give a lot of money to Bobby Witt Jr. But in terms of free agency talks, we know they're not going after Juan Soto, after Blake Snell, after Max Fried, after Pete Alonso. They're going to go after guys that, yes, can still be pricey and expensive. But the goal and this expectation should be, how do we get to 90 wins? Maybe even how do we get to 88 wins? That's still good enough to get you into the postseason. And I think there's going to be that added pressure of you don't get to sit around and start 12-20. I think if the Royals started 12-20 last year, it would have been frustrating. It would have been disappointing. But at the end of the day, it was still a team coming off 106 losses. Nobody thought a 30-win improvement would be possible, but they got it done. Now it's about building on that. And you have that pressure of people no longer hope for just good baseball. They're going to expect good baseball in 2025. And that's also the fun part about it. Because as I said, I think attendance reflects that. After the Royals went on their run in 14, they had great attendance in 15. After they won the World Series in 15, great attendance in 16. And then after they fell back a little bit, attendance dropped a little bit in 17. You're hoping that the good season in 2024 is going to boost those attendance numbers in 2025. And if J.J. Picollo and John Sherman assemble a really good roster, a competitive roster, and you get that talk in the offseason of this can be a team that wins the division, this should be a top seed in the American League, that's going to show that this pressure is real. This team is for real. And I, for one, welcome it. It's going to be fun come spring training time to talk about a team that has made the postseason recently, and they're building on it. Now, last year it was things have to go right. A lot of buttons have to be pressed for this team to be good. Then they accomplished it. Now you want it to be easier, less buttons to be pressed, but more pressure added on to you for living up to good expectations, playoff baseball, and getting deeper into the postseason. That's the fun part about it. It's also the difficult part about it. Having to surpass 86 wins and multiple playoff wins from the 2024 season. All right, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, how are we going to watch the Royals in 2025? And I'm talking about the TV deal. I'll be honest with you, my head's still spinning with it, as it is for the stadium talks. But we'll talk about the TV deal next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our title sponsor today in FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And for my pick for this episode, I know we've had a lot of NFL picks all week long. I'm going to go to that Packers and Bears game, one of the earlier ones on Sunday, and have a first score for the Packers in this one. And I'm going to have it be on the ground here with Josh Jacobs. So let's talk a little bit about this TV deal. What we know, what we are still waiting to see. And this is something that just makes your head spin. This is something that is continuing to frustrate you, involving the Diamond Sports Group in Bally. I got this tweet from Evan Drillick, I believe. Looking at, yes, Evan Drillick, senior writer for The Athletic. He's done a great job at covering some of this TV deal stuff. And he put this out as I'm doing this podcast about 7 hours ago. The Diamond Sports Group says, in court, there is an additional team we remain in discussion with. Although not named in court, this continues to be the Kansas City Royals. No deal has been reached yet. So, right now, there's still that uncertainty. And that part is frustrating because a few days back, when we got some more traction on Bally Sports and Diamond Sports, this came from the press release where Diamond Sports Group announced a multi-year commercial agreement with Prime Video. So that would mean if the Royals and Diamond Sports come to an agreement, the Royals would be broadcasted on Amazon Prime, though it would also be an additional bundle deal there. So if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, you would still have to pay additional money to get the Royals season package. Now, I'm saying this without a deal in place right now, but whatever the Royals and Diamond Sports are working through, or whoever may be working through some stuff, that to me feels like the likeliest option at that point. It just feels like the signs are pointing in that direction. Why the Royals are so hung up on it, I'm not really sure on that. Again, I opened up with this saying my head's still spinning on it. It feels like this has been a constant cycle. We've just been in a wheel, and Diamond Sports and Bally, you get a report every once in a while. I mean, remember, we thought last year, or would have been the beginning of this year, we're close to 2025, so I'm getting my years mixed up there. But we found out, I believe, close to spring training about this Amazon Prime deal. And I was under the impression that Amazon Prime would be available to watch Royals games on in 2024. Then it was radio silent for the entire season. And that threw me for a little bit of a loop. But now you see teams like the, who else was it? Was it Arizona? Trying to go back over this past tweet. I thought it was a couple of teams. Yeah, the Braves have newly granted Diamond Sports Group streaming rights. That came from a Diamond Sports lawyer. Again, this all comes from Evan Drillick. The Angels, Braves, Tigers, Marlins, Cardinals, and Rays are all 6 MLB teams who are back with Diamond and have granted those rights. So the Royals and Diamond were still talking tonight, and that was yesterday. So I know I'm kind of jumping back and forth here, but per Evan Drillick, the Royals and Diamond were talking last night. So it still could possibly get done, but then as of 7 hours ago, still no deal between Diamond and the Royals. But if we had to make a guess, if we had to pick a possible plan, maybe the Royals and Diamond are getting hung up on some minor details there. Again, that's the frustrating part about this, is it's not like it's an easy step-by-step thing. It's not like it's when stuff gets reported, it's very easy to understand. Believe me, I'm still going through some of this stuff, trying to figure out all that I can. But signs are pointing to that if the Royals get a deal with Diamond Sports Group, that would take the place, of course, of Bally, and then games could be broadcasted on Amazon Prime. If you do not have an Amazon Prime subscription, you would have to go get that Amazon Prime subscription and then purchase a deal that would allow you to watch Royals games in 2025. I've also gotten some questions about the blackout restrictions, because I know for a lot of people, that's the main concern here. Based off where I'm living, would I be able to watch the team? Because Bally has been maybe your go-to source. Maybe you have chose not to watch it on Bally. The only time you watch Royals games is if you're at a bar. Maybe you have cable. Maybe you bought the app, or you downloaded the app and bought the subscription there. But that's still something I'm trying to sort through, of what the blackout restrictions would be. But I do think with the blackout restrictions, it should be the same unless they work some deal with the blackout restrictions. I would feel like my best guess, my best educated guess, is that the same blackout restrictions would apply, unless this Diamond Sports Group is going to get rid of all that, which would be best for baseball. We all know that would be the best for baseball. But in my opinion, I think, unless somebody else has found different information, which please leave it below on the YouTube channel, and let us know if there would be blackout restrictions based off where you are, because we know with Bally, right, there was that market where if you weren't in the Royals market, you were going to be getting blacked out on that. It's weird that baseball does all this stuff, and it just, quite frankly, makes me irritated that this can't be a simple process. And of course, the Royals would be that one team that are not in agreement just yet. Whatever that may be about, I'm not 100% sure. And I know I've said that numerous times in this segment, but maybe I'll just leave you with this, because this comes from the press release from the FanDuel Sports Network, where Diamond Sports agrees to a multi-year commercial agreement with Prime Video. Says that as of November 13th, 2024, Diamond Sports Group today announced the multi-year agreement with Prime Video, enabling direct-to-customer local access to Diamond's FanDuel Sports Network's 16 regional sports networks, serving fans in 31 states. Goes on to say FanDuel Sports Network RSNs will be available via Prime Video as an add-on subscription for customers living within each team's designated geographic area. So that's where I'm getting at with, kind of feels like the same blackout restrictions apply to this. More details will be announced at a later date. Customers will be able to subscribe to and watch their local FanDuel Sports Network content, including live games and pre- and post-game programming directly through Prime Video. So pre-game, post-game would all be available on that network through Amazon Prime Video. And lastly, Amazon will market the availability of FanDuel Sports Network content on Prime Video. So it should be very easy to find. That's why I had this feeling of the same blackout restrictions were going to be applied to this. So if you're having more questions on it, I hope I can answer them for you. But that comes from that big press release about Diamond Sports. Still no word yet on if the Royals have agreed to a deal. Hopefully tomorrow or the day after that, we can get more clarity on it. But to me, feels like that's where things are headed. Hopefully, it's just some minor details the Royals and Diamond Sports Group are caught up in, and that when this all gets resolved, you'll be able to watch the Royals on Amazon Prime. And for a lot of people, hopefully a very affordable subscription package so you can watch the Royals easily in 2025. All right, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, let's talk about the stadium talks and where the Royals could maybe be playing in the future. All I'll tell you is that I'm so fatigued in talking about potential stadium sites. But we'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final sponsor today in SelectQuote. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. In sports, winning is everything. That's why you always need a good strategy to keep you moving toward the goalpost. Winning strategies for life are just as important, and that's why on my team, I have life insurance through SelectQuote to protect my legacy and my family's financial future. Get the right life insurance for you for less at SelectQuote.com/lockedon. Go to SelectQuote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's SelectQuote.com/lockedon. From one head-scratching thing to another, I'm talking about the TV deal for the Royals, where they might be broadcasted on next year, to where the Royals may be playing in the future. And if you are wanting me to talk in this segment about where I really think they're going to play or where I think it's the best option, it's not really the point of this segment here. But I will say this about the stadium talks, because now there's the rumblings of they could go to Johnson County on the Kansas side. The Sprint campus was brought up, which there's land out there to build. But again, this is just another site that is being proposed to the public. And from my point of view, as I feel like I've done a handful of times when talking about the stadium and what it could look like, where it could be, the issue with it is that there's been many occurrences now where there's been a leader, there's been a front for where the best possible site will be, the best location. And when you have that happen so many times, it kind of gets old. It gets stale. And this is no fault of the Royals, in my opinion. I mean, a little bit maybe, but they're trying to promote different locations, maybe for leverage. Maybe they believe that actually is the best possible spot. But when John Sherman bought this ball club, we very quickly found out there was this idea of a downtown stadium, that when the lease was up at the Truman Sports Complex, the Royals would try to move downtown, and for the first time ever, the Royals would get that downtown feel. There would be lots to do down there. There would be bars to go to, restaurants to go to. If you went to a Royals game, it wasn't just for the baseball aspect. You could take clients, you could take friends, you could take boyfriend, girlfriend, grandparents, and go down and enjoy more than just the game. You could grab lunch before, dinner before, drinks after. You could go to a movie. I don't know, a movie, then catch the baseball game. Whatever interests you, you would have that ability more so than you do right now at the Truman Sports Complex. Don't get me wrong. I am nostalgic about Kauffman Stadium. I love Kauffman Stadium. I think it is a beautiful and scenic stadium. And for a lot of teams that come in and visit, a lot of opposing fan bases that come in and visit, they say the same things. How great Kauffman Stadium is, how picturesque it is, how nice the fans are there. And I think from a curiosity standpoint of mine, I would love to know what everybody's feelings would be, opposing fans or opposing players, if the Royals did have a brand new stadium downtown. There's lots of different locations. Again, I think before it was on the ballot last year, there were like 14 sites that were picked out. Then there was 2 front runners. Then those 2 front runners were not even on the ballot when there was voting. The plan felt a little bit sloppy, where there were a lot of last minute changes. It was 58% no, 42% yes. And then it's back to the drawing board. And so when I got the word of this new site, it could be Sprint Campus and this and that, I didn't read into it too much because we've been here before. And I don't know if I'm going to give too much energy. As I said, I'm fatigued on it. I don't know if I'm going to give too much energy to it until you've got a site picked out. That's where it's going to be. Here's what the renderings look like. It's on the ballot. And all the questions are answered. And, John Sherman, I think more so now than in the past, he's been a little bit more quiet about this. And I think that's the great approach. So I go all the way back to my initial point on this and saying, the Royals are doing things a little bit differently and I think better this time around. I think it's great to be working behind the scenes, be a little bit more reserved, be quiet, and construct the best possible plan that could get voted on and approved. There's a lot of other extra stuff that goes into it that I don't feel like it's my place to talk about it because I'm not the most knowledgeable on it. But I think I share the same feeling with a lot of fans out there, where even if you are pro moving downtown or anti-moving downtown or pro moving to the Kansas side or anti-moving to the Kansas side, I think you're just fatigued at this point because it feels like that marriage, if you will. It feels like that marriage where you get divorced 3 or 4 times and every single time the remarriage happens, it's going to be different this time. No, this actually is the right one. And that's where with all these sites, it's, this feels like the great option. This feels like the best fit. And then a couple months later, it's somewhere else. And that's why I would rather wait until it actually is the real deal. It actually is on the ballot again. And there could be a more foolproof plan. There could be a more solidified idea of where this team could be. And my thoughts on it, my closing thoughts on it, if you will, are that the Royals made this plan to move downtown. And I know there's a lot more to it than just, move downtown because it makes a lot of sense. I understand why the public voted no. There was a majority of a vote no for that downtown stadium, or at least that location. But you have this feeling and this idea that baseball could be great downtown in Kansas City. And there's a couple different sites that make sense. And when you have these new spots, and I live right now on the Kansas side, and you have these new spots of the Sprint campus up there, or if it's out by the Legend. I used to work out the Legends when I worked in independent league baseball. It's a great area out there, but when you're building out there and you're constructing a new stadium, and there is development out there, but I don't think that's the same thing as a downtown stadium. It's like if you're going to move a stadium, why wouldn't it be downtown where you have all these extra things around it and keep the team in Missouri? I know there's a lot of pro Missouri people on it. And look, at the end of the day, wherever they play, it's not going to influence whether I go to the games or not. They could play anywhere in any county, and I would still go to Royals games, even if it meant an hour drive. That's just how much I love this team. I love watching baseball. But it is getting to a point of fatigue where fans are just kind of done caring about it until there's a definitive spot. Maybe that's going to ruffle some feathers or rub people the wrong way. I apologize on that. It's just my take on it. I won't put too much thought and effort into it until we've got an actual picked location. That's what the stadium will likely look like. And here's everything around it. Here's all the answers to the questions the public may have. And at that point, that's when we can come on here and have a segment talking about what the new stadium would look like. But to me, this was all about fatigue, man. All these new spots, all these new renderings, it's hollow to me at this point because there's been so many different sites picks and so many different renderings of what it may look like. I'm just going to wait for the real deal before I can really start putting my full attention and full focus onto it. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB as Baseball Guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, it'll be another Mailbag Friday for us, but until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.